I was out of control. I think I put some gray hairs on my parents' heads. I had a great social life. I would go out. I went out all the time. I guess the problem is I just wouldn't come home. I think my mom was, like, this close to putting, like, locks on my bars on my windows because I would take off, wasn't making the best choices, and then I think it was my brother who, because my brother was having similar issues, and he went online and saw some symptoms for ADHD, and he showed them to my mom and was like he's like, I think I have this," and then she just reads and she's like, "Oh my god," like, I think she thought she was going crazy, like, "Why is my whole family just kind of losing it?" And she read the list and she was like, "Oh my god." She brought me, my brother, and actually my dad to the doctor, and we were all swiftly, like, diagnosed with ADHD.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Square Pegs podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Caitlin O'Brien. She recently finished her PhD degree in applied mechanics from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Connecticut. Caitlin's experience with ADHD is very unique, and I'm sure if you have ADHD or if you know someone with ADHD, there's a lot in this conversation that you may benefit from. Let's listen to the conversation with Caitlin O'Brien. So, hi, Caitlin. Thank
Hi.
you for taking the time to come here. And I know you started working a few months ago, and I appreciate that you took time off of your day to do this with me.
I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Caitlin, you've been out of school for now more than
Yeah,
six,
it's a little
seven
over
months.
6 months, yeah.
So let's catch up first. I mean, how has it been? Real
Oh,
life.
it's great. It really is. I think I'm, like, finally ready to move on to, like, that next part of my life, and it's almost weird, like, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, "Wow, I have a real job to go to." Like, I'll sit in my office and be like, "Wow, like, this is your job," you know? So, it's great.
So what about that is different? I mean, when you were a grad student, you had a serious project to do, but like
Mhm.
what is different about work? I mean, it's just amount of payment or
Honestly, that's probably part of it. That and I think I just finally got out of, like, "You are not in school anymore." You know, I was in college for 10 years.
Mhm.
So, just kind of moving on and still doing work that, was technical and challenging is it's still really rewarding, and it's a new location, kinda down by the water, so
Mhm.
I
So
really like
Caitlin,
it.
I don't know if you remember or not the first time we met, and I think I've received permission from you to discuss this, but you participated in one of the studies that we ran many years back in 2015, something like that. So you were a participant in that study. So we were measuring creativity and also we were administering a test of like ADHD traits. And I've told you about that, but you scored off the chart on creativity. So it was just like, I can't believe it. It was just like, for example, like if the standard score is 100, yours was like close to 190, something
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
What's crazy? So I was always thinking like, okay, is there an opportunity to work with this person more? And then I got to know more about you. I realized that you are actually a civil engineering student and you're an artist. You have excellent mathematical skills, computer coding skills, and all of those
Keep
things.
going.
So that encouraged me. I was hoping that I get to work with you, and I was happy that you agreed to join grad school. You work with me as part of your master's program, and then you finish your PhD with Professor Christensen, another faculty member in the civil engineering department. We want to kind of like go back to your education journey,
Mm.
start maybe from your childhood. And while we talk about I know most of the times, I mean, the challenges are more memorable. They stay with us. So we talk about them. But I want you also to think about like, as a person with ADHD, what the unique skills assets that you had and you used during your school years. Also talk about those. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say through elementary school, I really didn't I mean, this sounds weird, but I didn't really have to try very hard, I don't think. And then once middle school hit and, things started to get a little harder in school, I started to struggle a little bit more. I also started having behavioral issues. I had trouble just making it all the way through a class. I was very disruptive, and that kind of just carried on all through high school.
So
Um,
for the elementary school, was there any experience that stood out for you? Any kind of like any interaction with teachers? Was any activity that like you liked, you didn't like?
I I loved writing actually, and I think back then you could make things a little more fun, you could put word art in your papers and add animations to your PowerPoints, and a lot of projects were kind of more artsy, which I really, really loved. I tried really hard at those kind of things, and I still actually really tend to work very, very hard on things that I can use creativity in. Anything that, this has to be a technical paper and no quote unquote fun involved. It was harder for me. Yeah.
How do you differentiate those skills or those tasks that they involve creativity? Like, is it evident to you from the beginning? Is the way they are framed for you or they're presented to you?
Well, when I think in elementary school, I loved writing because my teacher would accept just the craziest ways I would package my writing. Like when we were learning about pilgrims or 1800s, that type of thing, I would get this really brown colored cardstock and I would type my paper in calligraphy
Mhm.
and then I would roll it up and like tie it with like a little bow, thinking
Mhm.
like, "Oh, that's how they did it back then." So,
Interesting.
I loved I love finding a way to make my project or whatever I was doing creative, and my teacher accepted it. She's probably like, "Oh, I
Accepted
don't."
or also appreciated that.
I think she encouraged me. Her name was Mrs. Burns. She was one of my favorite teachers. I think she accepted it and she encouraged it. She probably was like, "Oh, it's cursive. I don't really
Mhm.
wanna have to read this," but, I put a lot of time into it, and I liked doing it, so
And going to middle school, what happened? I mean, like you had more room, more or less flexibility. What was the issue then?
I mean, I think just getting older, like I was preteens, and I'm not totally sure what really happened. I think I didn't, in elementary school, I don't think you go home and study a lot. But then once you enter middle school, it's a lot more studying, a lot more independent work, and not as much craftsy type things, which I liked. So that's when grades really started to slip and behavior started to slip for me. And then it's just kind of a slippery slope, because
Yeah.
once you're not doing too hot, you just kind of I wasn't it's not like I was failing, but I wasn't, I remember I got my first B in the 6th grade and I like cried and cried. I was so upset. And then after that it was like, B minus, like, whatever, C
Mhm.
plus, like whatever. So
At any point, did you disconnect on like in certain topics or like certain years?
I did not like history, which is funny because I actually really enjoy history now.
Why?
Um,
Back then, why didn't you like it?
I think because if you if you learn about history, I think from a good teacher or a good book or good video, it's more of storytelling,
Yes.
where in school it's more just like this person invaded this person on this year, on this day, and you need to know that, like the year and the day and what city it was in. Where it's like I like the story where, oh, I can't even think of it off the top of my,
Yeah,
so and
yeah.
so, there was a feud, and I like that part where it's much more real to me instead of just, you need to know that they invaded and, stuff like that, and I think that's where a lot of at least how I remember how history was in middle school and even high school.
I personally struggled with that so much, remembering names and dates. So it was a very painful thing for me. It was like something that I knew whenever I'm asked to do, and it was like oral exam, and I would just freeze. I would just like, and like if they were dates and names that they were so similar to each
Mhm.
other, so
A lot of
like
Johns.
my so and exactly what you say. I mean, like I love the story part of the history. I mean, like just the narration of that and like how things happen, what is there for us to learn. But the way it is handled at school, I never liked it. It was one of the topics that I mean, we had to take it. I had no choice. I always had like a very bitter experience in the classroom, in the exams, in the assignments. I mean, like, and it was something that I spent a lot of time studying and just to be able to get a mediocre grade. So,
It so you're in Iran, right? So
yes,
did
yeah.
you what history did you cover? Because I
So it was a history of Persia before Arabs invade Iran and like after that. So it was just like maybe 200 2500 years worth of
yeah, you had to
history.
go
So
I had to only go back like 300 years. So
yeah. So
it's
it's
a
a
little
little bit
harder.
more extensive that yeah uses history. But again, like history is one of those topics that like because there are so many details of dates and names and locations and cities like and sequences of things that you can really make those the subject of examination
Mm.
that it doesn't matter which part of the world it is, you can just do that to history. Other topics are maybe more difficult. I mean, biology also is like that. I mean, you can just focus on names and terminology, but history, yeah, is unique. I
Yeah,
mean,
because I feel like at least with science and math, there's logic to it. Like,
yes.
this happens because of this. In history, it's like, this ruler was crazy, or like, he was power hungry and or, you know, different things like that. So it's in my mind, I don't think like that. I don't think strategically. So it's a lot of like, well, why would they do that? Or just, or just kind of because he was kind of like an asshole. So yeah, I think that's is the abstractness, I think that can be confusing too.
Yeah, right. So any other topic that I know history is on top of the list in terms of being torturous, but like any other topic that you disliked?
English. Well, I'm not the greatest speaker, but my grammar and spelling is actually pretty good. It's more just the books. I
that,
could
that
not
you were
sit through
assigned to
the
read?
yeah, just the Shakespeare, stuff like that. I don't know. I think if I gave it maybe another shot now, maybe I would like it more, but those aren't my type of books, and I didn't like being told, "You have to read this,
Yes.
right now, get this done."
That's what I thought about you particularly. You're a person that you don't specifically enjoy being told
What to
what to
do.
do
Yeah.
exactly. Because I noticed that when we were working together, that whenever there was a task that was overly structured, so there was no room for you to do it your way or impose your creativity or divergent thinking. Those tasks, I realized that are the ones that you avoided the most.
Mhm.
So I suspect like because it was a required reading, so it was assigned to you to go read this. It was not about it was nothing about like Shakespeare or his style of writing or like the text was difficult because it was assigned to you.
You're right. Yeah, yeah. I remember we had to keep some diary. We'd have to write down passages that we thought were interesting, like the whole passage. I'm like, I haven't even read this thing. And I'm supposed to turn in like a diary
Hmm.
of all the passages, by the end of the week. So I just went on. I went on Google and I looked up the assignment and I was like, oh, like here it is. This is great. And I just copied it down and I used like different inks. I was not much of a cheater, but I needed to get this done. There's no way I was going to do it. So, I turned it in and my teacher pulls me out in the hallway and she goes, "So how do you know you cheated on this?" And I was like, "I don't know." She goes, "You copied the assignment you copied offline was the junior version of Shakespeare. It was like for little kids. It wasn't even the adult version of Shakespeare." And I didn't even notice. I was just like, "Oh, great." So,
So
so
that's
it's
funny.
about the highlight of my English career in high school.
So okay, that tells a lot actually. So how about let's talk about the bright sides of it also, topics that you enjoyed most.
One of my favorite courses actually was a structural engineering course. I took my senior year. I really, really liked it a lot. It was pretty broad. Actually, I loved tech ed. Tech ed's a little, like wood shop and stuff like that. I loved that in middle school. We had to build balsa
Mhm.
wood bridge, and I stayed after school. I worked on this thing so hard. It's probably the hardest I worked on something all in middle school, and I wound up breaking the school record for weight
Load
to
bearing?
yeah, the strength to
Yeah.
weight ratio. And then in high school, we did it except with different types of pasta or whatever.
Mm.
And I remember making little I-beams out of the linguine and stuff. And
What about it? I mean, what about it was so attractive to you?
I mean, I think it was creative, and I liked looking up different ways, like, oh, this one's stronger because of the different types of truss bridges, and we actually tested different ways to put it together. We would before we put it together, like, oh, this is the better way to do it, and I don't know, I think I just got really, really focused in on it, and I wanted to I remembered my glory, from 7th grade. I wanted to bring it back, and I actually broke the record again.
Mm,
I remember they had to go down to the weight room in the gym and get more weights because I used them all in the class. It made me so happy.
nice.
So, that's where I peaked. Nice.
So did that have anything to do with your choice of civil engineering?
Um,
Or was it some I mean, like, does it have any connection to your major?
so I think I chose civil engineering because of my mom, 'cause my mom's a civil engineer. Looking back on it now, the courses that I enjoy more, I think I probably would have enjoyed mechanical engineering better, but I mean, obviously no regrets, like, I am where I am now because I chose civil engineering, but, yeah, it was definitely because of my mom, so
And how did you like physics and math courses? In
I liked math. I liked physics. I had to study a lot when it came to physics, especially physics 2 with the electricity, and I still struggle with that actually. But, I enjoyed those. I enjoyed those more than, the concrete stuff like that.
Mhm.
I'm not sure, maybe because things were moving? I don't know.
So that's another thing. So, like, you wanna see more tangible outcomes, right? Is that why, like, bridges are more attractive than circuits for you?
I'm not sure because I honestly think waves are the coolest thing. Even in high school, I remember seeing an animation of what a wave actually is, the little particles moving up. Because 'cause you'd think a wave is a particle moving in space, but it's really
Yes.
just moving up
Up
and
and down.
down, and all of them together create a wave, and I just thought that was so cool. And I love those different types of tests, like modal tests, modal analysis and stuff. I think I like seeing concepts that you learn in the classroom, like, actually come to life, where it's like, "Oh, you're not just learning this and in real life." You make a bunch of assumptions when you're learning something. So, does it really happen in real life? And it's like, "Yes, it really does happen in real life."
Yeah.
I think that's what I like about it. I remember seeing a clip of a bridge that was about to collapse. It's a really
Mhm.
old video of the
Yeah,
black
I
and
know
white,
that.
yeah. I remember thinking that was just really cool and it's terrifying.
And, anything else you wanna talk about during your middle school years before we start talking about high school?
Oh, yeah, I might have invaded high school already. That cheating thing was in high school. I was, like, in ninth grade, so
So, let's talk about high school then. How was your general experience? Your social life, also talk about it, or your hobbies, after school activities, what you liked. And also, like, if you now that you're an adult, you can think about, like, your ADHD, put things in context. When you look back, how much your ADHD defined you and your behavior during high school years?
So, I was undiagnosed until the beginning of my senior year, and I think my behavior really showed it. I was out of control. I think I put some gray hairs on my parents' heads. I I had a great social life. I went out all the time. I guess the problem is I just wouldn't come home. I think my mom was, like, this close to putting, like, locks on my bars on my windows because I would take off. Wasn't making the best choices, and then I think it was my brother who, because my brother was having similar issues, and he went online and saw some symptoms for ADHD, and he showed them to my mom and was like he's like, I think I have this," and then she just reads and she's like, "Oh my god," like, I think she thought she was going crazy, like, "Why is my whole family just kind of losing it?" And she read the list and she was like, "Oh my god." She brought me, my brother, and actually my dad to the doctor, and we were all swiftly, like, diagnosed with ADHD, and I think that helped a lot, and I think a lot of it was just, like, emotional problems.
How did that help?
The diagnosis?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm honestly not sure. I mean, I started going to the doctor, but I don't think I realized how, I guess, many issues I had until
Was it like self-awareness? Did it have, it seems, I mean, you really acted deliberately. I mean, you did what you feel like.
I was very impulsive, yeah, very impulsive. I think yeah, yeah, you're right. I think getting some help kinda helped me calm down with that. I think being able to focus more in school, I think once so many things start to build up, it's just like a domino effect where you kind of start going you start digging a deeper hole. I think I once I started seeing the light again, I was like, "Oh, like, I can do this," you know? Because then I had to start thinking about college, and my grades weren't terrible, but I wanted to go to, like, a decent school,
So
and
at some point in your high school, you were not seeing college in future?
I think no, I think I was always seeing college because I always knew I was smart enough, but I just wasn't really applying myself. I was hanging out with not the best people.
Mhm.
I think the problem is I think some of that behavior, the impulsive behavior went into college with me as well, so I think some of it was also just growing up a little bit,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And then you applied to like how many schools?
too.
Two?
Yeah,
And
UNH and UConn, yeah.
you got admitted to both?
I did.
Why did you choose UConn?
I didn't think I was gonna get into UConn,
To
so UNH was kind of my backup, but I liked UConn. I liked how close it was, just, like, an hour away. It was out of state, so kind of a fresh start. I wasn't gonna see a ton of people from my school, not like a UMass. I'm from
Mhm.
Massachusetts. So, I liked the campus.
And then thinking about your freshman, sophomore years, how was your
Yes.
experience?
I'm lucky I didn't get kicked out my freshman year just because I got in a lot of trouble. I think it was just the freedom of being able, like, "Oh my god, I'm in college, like, no parents, I can do what I want." You can't do totally what you want.
Yes.
So, I got in trouble a couple times, and then
Anything
sophomore year did
related to
better.
classes?
No, my academics were good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how was your experience with Janet classes? And
Gen Ed, honestly, I probably did just enough to get by because I focused more on my engineering courses. I think my engineering GPA was better than my overall
yeah.
GPA just because some of them I don't like that there's content areas, I guess, which I understand why there are, like, there's certain courses you need to take to kind of have a well-rounded education, but I just remember I loved philosophy. We had to take a philosophy and ethics course for undergrad, and I loved it, and I was, "Oh, I wanna take another one," and I was told, like, "Well, no, it doesn't fill a content area," so
Mm.
and I was just kinda like, "Oh, okay, I guess I'll take a class I just don't care about and do just enough to get by instead of, taking something I actually really, really enjoyed." So that
What about
was
philosophy?
I think I liked the ethics part. The professor had a really well-structured class, and then there was discussions where a TA would kind of in a smaller group debate 2 sides of and the topics were really interesting, death penalty, like prostitution, drugs, stuff like that. And he would just really he didn't pick a side, he was almost like devil's advocate, but he
Yeah.
really made you think, and I think I liked that part. I liked the logic part of it, and I also liked
The complexity of
the complexity, yeah, and I came out of that course with my mind changed on a lot of things, just because the way you think about things, like, with less emotion and more logic, I think was really
interesting.
cool.
Yeah. And for your early engineering classes, any of them particularly attract you or discourage you? And is there a reason for that?
I mean, honestly, I double majored in civil and environmental engineering.
Mhm.
I think if I could go back, I probably wouldn't have done that. It was a huge course load, and towards the end of it, it was like, I'm almost done, so I'm just gonna finish. I'm sorry, environmental engineering was really just not for me. I think I was thinking more like, "Oh, clean energy," but it's more like wastewater treatment plants and stuff, which, nothing wrong with obviously you need that, but
What about that? I mean, like, can you think a little deeper?
the
Is
biology
it
part.
is it like the demands of the class, the nature of the topic, just like what this is about, or like is it what I'm getting at is if it is about the topic or if it is about the way it is presented. Can you differentiate the two?
I think I thought the ideas were cool. Like, actually, I loved air pollution class. I loved that. I think because it more had more to do with dynamics of air and stuff like that. But courses like water treatment, once it got down to the chemistry of it,
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm all set.
Hmm.
I could have watched like an intro video on this and been fine. Not really interested in the biology chemistry part of things. I was never really a biology person.
So no biology that hasn't been
Oh, no,
no
I can't do biology, no.
no okay. Animate objects are not your thing. How about on the civil engineering side?
What I liked or
Yeah, what you like most, or like structural classes, those that are more math heavy, probably.
yeah, I liked math. I think I liked more math heavy courses. I liked courses that were able to have some type of hands-on part of it. Some of my favorite projects to do, I like options, they say, "Oh, like, make a PowerPoint presentation or make a movie." I was always the person, "Oh, I'm gonna make a movie."
Hmm.
And I would ask, does it have to be like History Channel, boring documentary, or can
Hmm.
it be fun,
Hmm.
And I would always just kind of be like, "Can I please make it fun?"
Yeah.
And I still have, like, a lot of the videos I made because I think I learned more that way too because
Yeah.
I could implement it in a more fun way, and I think I'm like, "I want this to be something that people enjoy watching." I
Mm.
don't want them to be like, "Oh, another presentation." Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And again, it goes back to room for your creativity. That
Mm.
like if someone or some course demand or any task detaches your creativity from it, I mean, like it seems, I mean, you have difficulty operating. I mean, like, so you cannot really be separated from.
Yeah, and I think I like making almost like a product because I had a lot of all my friends were art students, all of them. I could say, "Hey, like look what I made or look what I did today," instead of being like, "Oh, look at this paper I wrote," like
Mm.
what's more interesting, like reading a paper or watching this video that's a little goofy and kind of maybe a little pushing the boundaries of what's okay to be putting in
Hmm. Hmm.
an educational video, but I think people would pick the video every time.
Why are most of your friends art major?
Yeah, just I got along with them better.
Better than
Yeah.
engineering ones?
Yeah. I mean, there weren't many females, I don't think, in my classes anyway. But yeah, I mean, I like had a pretty big social life in college too. So I think probably when a lot of engineering students were
So
studying.
did you ever consider like majoring in art? I mean, like, no? You just
No.
wanted to be with them and like hang out with them, right?
Yeah, because I think when it comes to art, I've been offered money to do things, and as soon as I get offered money, it almost, like,
Mm,
loses the magic for me.
that
It's
is
like I
so
don't wanna
interesting.
do it anymore. It's almost like torture for me to do it, and I think it's partially because I don't think my art is, like, worth I don't know. I think it's partially I don't think it's worth it, and it's also like, "Oh, now I have to do it," and before I was doing
Yes.
it because I want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. We keep going back to again, like
I know.
if if you because again, like you're a highly creative person. And here we are. I mean, a highly creative person. You cannot tell that person this is exactly how something needs to be done. So people are like in engineering, for example, education. They're talking about like bringing in more like highly creative people. I'm not sure if we are equipped or even like if we know how to nurture or how to kind of like benefit from that creativity, because you cannot bring a highly creative person and say like, okay, take this assignment, the process is abcd, goes through it, and
Mhm.
like, so that that defies the purpose. I mean, like that's not how you do it. I mean, a highly creative person is just like, by the way, we have this problem, see if it is fun for you to work on it. So
Right.
that's the only way you can engage that creativity. So
And I think a part of that too is, that's great to be creative, but you also need to have some type of self-discipline where, okay, this isn't totally fun for you, but it has to get done. And I think that's something that I'm still working on. I've definitely gotten better at, but, just because you don't wanna do something doesn't mean you just don't do it. You
Mhm.
know, the tax man still is expecting your taxes to get done.
Yeah, yeah.
Your lecture I've in grad school, I actually just neglected my electricity bill, and I came home one day, my electricity was shut off, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Crap." Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it
It
happens.
catches up to you,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So I want to share an idea with you and see how you think about that. So the neurodiversity paradigm that we have been promoting, if you think about that, neurodiversity means nothing when you think and talk about an individual. The only way it has, even linguistically, any meaning is when you're talking about a group that then there is neurodiversity in it. It's the same way that like one tree doesn't make a forest. So there is no way that you can say it's a forest of one tree. I mean, like it doesn't work conceptually. So for neurodiversity, commonly we call a person that has ADHD or dyslexia or is on the spectrum like neurodiverse. And yeah, we use that, but conceptually it is wrong when you think about that. So I said that to set the stage for what I want to say. That when we talk about neurodiversity, it means that now we want to look beyond an individual, and an individual covers the entire spectrum of ideation all the way to implementation, delivery, and like all the kind of like articulations involved in that, time management, all of those things. So this is how our education is set up today, that it expects one student can cover the entire spectrum,
mhm,
and each one of us essentially, that's what essentially in what neurodiversity means, that each one of us are better in like to operate, or are more comfortable, have more fun to operate in one part of this spectrum. Like for example, for myself, I really enjoy the ideation side of it. I can spend hours being in meetings to think about things on the whiteboard. We draw things. I mean, we explore different ideas. But if someone tells me that that sounds good, now go draft like a two-page like proposal,
mhm.
that's not my thing. I mean, like, someone else needs to take it over from here. So what do you think about that? I mean, like in an ideal situation, if we can really pair up people to cover like this variety of different skill demands, and be able to be creative and make sure things happen on time, quality is delivered, but not by looking at an individual, expanding this definition of creativity to a team.
I totally agree, and I almost wanna draw a parallel to the job I work in now because I think that's how my group operates, where everyone kinda has their own role, and they're very happy in that role. They do what they like to do, and then as soon as another portion of it needs to be implemented, it's like, "Oh, let's give it to this guy." It's very collaborative, you know what I mean? Where we all kind of rely on each other to be able to fit the pieces together. I'm not expect and I am not I do not like modeling, like
Mhm.
physical, like abacus, stuff like that. And I'm not expected to do modeling. That's just it's not my thing and that's fine. I like that because I think as engineers in an engineering school, you're being taught all of these different especially civil engineering, God, it spreads some over so many different
Yes.
topics where you almost feel like you have to be a master at all of them. And I don't think that's really true. I think teams work best when you use that person to their advantage and then don't push them. Of course, you should learn more things, and I think you should always be wanting to learn and get better at other things. But I don't think going it like in school, you should be like, oh, well, I just remember starting my job and them saying, okay, you have a PhD, but that's like we're not going to expect you to know everything. It's okay. Like, don't
Mm.
expect us to come up to you and be like, oh, how do you do ABC?
Did you have a say in what you like to do, what you will be more happy to do?
I think in my interview, they kinda touched on that. I wasn't totally sure what I was gonna be doing in the job when I did an interview, but I was very honest, and I basically said, "This is if this is the type of job where I'm gonna be sitting in a chair all day, every day, like, I'm not interested." And I think they heard that. So, I think that's another thing where you shouldn't be afraid to say or you shouldn't just take a job because it's offered to you. I always tell myself right before an interview, they're not just interviewing you, you are interviewing them.
Yes.
So I think I wasn't saying like, "Oh, I'm only gonna do this," like, and don't expect me to do anything else, but I
Mhm.
think I made it very clear, like, this is the type of work I'm doing now, and this is what I hope to continue doing. I think I was heard, and that's
Nice.
what makes me happy to be at work every day.
That's very important, and it's important across the board, but it's particularly important for neurodiverse people that like they have a narrower region of interest, but they can operate really intensely in that region
Mm,
compared to maybe I don't like the term, but like neurotypical people that they can span over a wider kind of spectrum of different tasks and things like that. So for us, it's a kind of a narrow bandwidth, but it is intense. I mean, like we can really hyper focus and get things done. But as soon as someone stretches you to other things, that's when you start like facing frustrations. And sometimes I've seen like individuals. I mean, like because I get emails from those that they are even working professionals, and they complain that they don't like their jobs because it just continues reminding them what they are not good at. I mean,
mm,
like they miss deadlines, they like, so it's just all frustration. And my naive suggestion is always that like your mental health is more important. Just think about it and you
right.
may have options, you know. I'm very happy that where you're working, you're happy, you think you're being mobilized and you're utilizing your assets. That's very important. And
They accept my little artsy well, sometimes we just summarize our work quickly for other people to look at in PowerPoints, and I might stick a couple word art animations in there, keep it interesting, so they accept
yeah,
that part of it
it adds
too.
value.
But it's like, "Oh, Caitlin made that."
Yeah. It becomes your signature after a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why not,
Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
And I promise you that like everyone enjoys it. That like
Mhm.
compared to a dull like presentation, just like all text, boring. I mean, like we all enjoy creative things. I mean, like although we may not all be creative, but we all enjoy creativity. Otherwise, art would be something very narrow for a certain type of people. Like everyone enjoys art. So
Mm,
like creativity, a few people can really do quality creative work, but everyone enjoys it. Everyone appreciates the creative work. So
that's
yeah,
good to know.
keep doing that. Yeah, for sure. Going back to the last 2 years of your college experience, senior year, junior year, how was your experience back then?
I think it was good. I mean, I think I kind of learned my lesson freshman year to not do really bad things anymore.
Mhm.
Not that, like, nothing crazy, but yeah, I mean, it was I honestly kind of just I didn't push for straight A's. I kind of just, to be honest, skated through a little bit. I did learn a lot, of course. I think in grad school I learned 100 times over
Mhm.
more.
We will get to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Dang it.
So I had you in one of my undergrad courses, design of facility structures. I don't know if you remember that or
Mhm.
not. And I remember like you were like super quiet, sitting in the back and doodling, and like I remember like I didn't notice that. I thought you're not listening at all. And one day I was walking around and I saw that you have like this perfect note on the side. You have these amazing figures
Oh.
and like flowers and doodles and everything. So it was just like note plus. So it was very interesting for me to see that like that is probably a way for you to keep yourself engaged, right, in the class. So is that true?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I always sit in the back, and I think it's because I don't like the feeling of eyes, like, on the back of my head. So, I like sitting in the back. I like if I'm late to a class, I don't like walking in the door and then everyone's looking at you, like, I'm usually the one that kinda sneaks in the back and just kinda hang out there, so
And it was clear that you were listening, but
mm.
because your notes were complete. I mean, it was perfect, but you didn't appear to be listening. I mean, from like, it was interesting because it seems, I mean, you had a third eye because you were seeing the notes on the board because you were writing your notes. And at the same time, you were very busy doodling and like producing art.
I think I did best in courses where I think every course does this, but they'll say, "Oh, the reading for this class is this," and I'll go do it beforehand because I can't pay attention in a class. I'll do the reading beforehand, kind of have an outline of what it's about, leave space for if I hear anything because I know that if it's a long class, I'm out. I'm tuning out. Like I just
Mhm.
can't do it. So it's a lot of kind of figuring out what worked for me. And what worked for me was figure out what's going on before you get there and then
Interesting.
follow along.
Was there any type of class that you could keep your attention and you could stay engaged to the end?
Probably the philosophy class
Mm.
because, like, I actually love classes with examples, but then once you get to the point where it's, like, kinda going too slow or too fast, I'm just like, "Ah," like, it just I think I just get impatient. I love videos online where you can kinda pick how fast it's going, put it on 2 times speed,
Mm.
and then pause, like, every 30 seconds, like, I'm more I'm more like that compared to, like, a live in-person class where, you can't fast forward people talking. So
Yeah, when it gets slow, it gets slow. I'm just trying to probe it a little more in terms of your first-hand experience because my belief is that the more personalized is this conversation is about you, particularly,
mhm.
the more beneficial it is to others. The more we generalize it, the less beneficial it's gonna get. So, are you aware when you're zoning out, or you just find yourself like after 10 minutes lost like part of the lecture? Or
It's probably 50-50. Sometimes I'm like, "Oh" sometimes I know ahead of time, like, this isn't happening, but I think, honestly, some of the times it's just, like, it's by choice, like, I just can't do this right now, nor or I don't want to, which is kind of bad.
why? It's because too painful, or it's just like the amount of cognitive effort you have to spend to keep yourself online, it's too much. It's
It could be some of that, it could just be that I'm one of those people again where it's like, "Oh, I have to go to this class at 2:50." It's like, I'd learn this later, I'll learn it on my own time, like, I think it's not being told what to do, it's like you have to show up to this class and sit there and listen for this period of time, and I think I just don't like that.
mm,
I'd rather go back later and figure it out than have
going
to
back to you don't want to be told what
well, yeah, exactly.
you don't want to be
But
told
sometimes
that.
it would bite me in the ass, it's like, "Oh, well, now I don't know what's going on because I didn't pay attention." It's just kinda like an endless cycle, you know? And I mean, I think also on top of that, I mean, some engineering courses, they can get bland where it's like, I don't know.
And when you realize that you're kind of like your mind is wandering, do you typically take the effort to bring yourself back, re-engage yourself, find something interesting in something to so you can continue on, or you?
I do now.
Hmm,
I definitely do now. Back then, probably not.
how can you do it now? I mean, like,
Because 'cause I'll,
tell us some of the
I
tricks. It's so difficult because it happens subconsciously. So maybe this
Yes.
is the first time you're thinking about that. But I want you to kind of like take the time to, because it can be very informative for
So
some of
actually,
our
now
listeners.
now that I think about it, I think, in meetings now, it's as soon as something comes up that I start thinking about independently, thinking about with my own personal thoughts, that's when I'll be like, "Oh, you're losing the conversation here, kind of reel yourself back in." And I try to if I don't know what's going on, just the next change of topic, like, choose that. Don't try and go back and figure out what happened, like, you can there's a bunch of other people here, ask someone else.
Mhm.
Just try and pick up on the next topic. If you don't know what's happening, nod your head, and then just if it's one-on-one, I'll say, "I'm sorry, can you say that again?" I'm pretty honest, I'll just be like, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat that?" But in a group meeting, it's more just, "Okay, next topic, let's
That's
refocus
very
here.
interesting. Now that you say that, I do that subconsciously, frequently. Like I give myself the freedom and liberty that, like, okay, it's fine. This is slide. It didn't happen, but I commit to the next slide
Hmm.
or the next when again there's a change in tone or like the next topic that comes. It's and it I do that,
Yeah,
and
it's a little
I was never
filter.
aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because once you start saying, "Oh, I don't know what's going on," I'm, like, kinda spiraling, like, "What were they saying?" Like, maybe this is what they were saying," and then you kinda start going down. By the time you get an idea of what they were talking about, they're already on to the next topic, and you're already more behind, so it's kinda
Yeah.
like signal
And
dropout.
I know you're a master daydreamer.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, my desk has a lot of fun stuff on it. I actually was like, "Kaylin, you have to stop bringing fun stuff to work because it's like, little like fidget things, all the fidget toys we ever had at like
Mhm.
during grad school. I have all of those there. I don't know. I think
I mean, this is something that I have recently been able to do to be able to harness this daydreaming, do it in the right way, in a productive way. Again, like if we want to kind of like attach boring tasks to it, it's not going to happen. But like it is more of that, okay, if my mind is wandering, I give it some freedom, yet I direct it toward what I want to be solved after that journey type of thing. It's just like very internal. It's difficult to explain it in words. I want to see like if you have been doing it or if you like have done it.
I think I kinda get what you're saying. Like, try and connect it to what you're doing right now, so it's like, "Oh, I can still do it." It's just more relevant to what needs to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a hybrid rather than, oh, stop it, go back to kind of your, I just give it more freedom that, okay, maybe you can stop typing now.
Mhm.
You can go with it. I mean, like now that your mind is like wandering or like is thinking about this, or you can get on this train of thought and like make sure you don't miss the stop. So essentially,
I think I do that a lot with coding because I mean, do you know what GitLab is?
yeah. Can you tell what GitLab is for our audience that they may not be
Sure.
familiar, and not the technicality of it is just like what it does that it is helpful.
Yeah, so, I mean, what I use it for is you can make a folder that it tracks, and as you update code or anything that's really in a text file, you can save a version of it on something called a repository, I think, and then you can leave notes for each version of it you save saying, "Oh, I added this," or "I took this out," and it keeps track of your progress as you're working on
And what is
things.
it? It shows what is different from one version to another one.
Right, yeah, it'll you can go back and see your older revisions. I love branching,
Mhm.
so I still have a set of code that works. So if someone says, "Caitlin, we need this done," I can go back to it, but it's really helped me be able to, like, expand into new things I wanted to do because it doesn't totally screw up my previous version of things that worked. It's made me more brave to be like, "Oh, let's try a new way of doing this,"
I see.
and then kinda merging because you can merge the branches together, and then continue once you're comfortable with the new way you've done things,
So
I
you
guess.
can go off track without hurting your, I mean, like the version or like the core of the work, and then if it works, then like you add it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm one of those person that does, like, version 2, but not version 3, version 2.2, version 2.2.2, Or, like, final version, and then it's, like, final, like, capital letters version, like, so
Final underscore
then I
two.
have, like, 20 versions, and it's like, I have no way to track what was going on here. Apparently, this is the final version, like, I don't know. So Git is awesome. I'm super behind on that. I know it's been around for forever, but finally kind
So
of
that
delved
that
into
that
it.
that is a very interesting productivity tool. I can say that because it makes sure that like your benchmark is recorded,
Mhm.
the the working code or whatever version it was, and then yet you can really go off tangent, do certain things, and like you're not gonna break the original thing, so you can always discard it, come back to the original,
Yeah.
and feeling safe to do that, right?
Right, and not worried about, "Oh, like, what did I do before where it worked and now it's not working?" I have you have to remember, I guess, to leave notes being like, "This is what you did differently,"
Yes.
which I'm still kinda working on, but yeah, I love it. I love being able to track what happened and then merging things and not having a million files left over. It's one file, just different versions that
Yeah.
it keeps.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, more than what it does, Caitlin, for you, correct me if I'm wrong, is this safe environment it provides. It's kind of like assurance. It gives you
mhm,
that, like, okay, you're not going to break anything. Go explore.
right.
Is that
It
true?
that's exactly it, and it gives you I guess, the bravery or the comfort that I can go mess around with this all I want, and I can still go back to the version that works, and it's okay. Because I think the biggest fear, especially when you have, 20 different sub-functions working together is once you break it and you have no record of what you did, it's kind of like, "Oh my god, how do
Mhm.
I get back to where I was?" You know? Yeah, so
And
that's
I want to draw a parallel also with our education system and how what we are doing actually is exactly the opposite of this approach, which is telling the students that there's only one way of solving this problem. I mean, like any other, approach may lead to being penalized, either like you lose marks or it's going to take time. So there's only one absolute way of. So it's just like essentially like it immediately tells you. I'm talking about more assignments, exams, things like
mhm.
that. That there's one way of doing it right. Find that and do it that way. Do not explore other things. There's no value in your exploration because ultimately you need to be able to submit it in a timely fashion. So I'm trying to kind of like say how distant is what we do during school years from what students end up doing after they
Right,
graduate.
and I think a lot of that too is just when class sizes are so big, it's like and there's probably 1 or I don't know how many TAs people usually have, but however many TAs that just have to deal with all of this work being submitted, and it's probably I'm guessing it's probably easier for them if it's like, oh, all of them are the
Yeah.
same format and stuff like that, but yeah, that's not how the real world works at all.
Yes.
I take some of those skills with me, which are great some of them are great technical skills, how to write a technical paper, things like that, I think are good skills to have, but yeah, I think being put in a box saying, "Oh, make sure it's you're gonna lose points if it's not, the date isn't in the top right corner." It's like, yeah, that's not how real life is at all.
And another thing, I think it was Catherine or Angela that we talked about is learning how to fail and learn from that failure and move forward. That is something that is heavily discouraged in our way of teaching
Mhm.
students. Honestly, that like failure is bad. It's not gonna. It shouldn't happen. I mean, like providing a safe environment for exploration. Honestly, I mean, I cannot imagine how other than that we can support the creativity of students. I mean, like creativity is like once every 10, 15, 20 attempts, right?
Mhm.
So if you want the correct outcome the very first time, I choose the safest, most conservative approach. I'm
Right.
not going to try creative things.
Yeah, I think it's like the journey they just wanna get to the right answer because the right answer is rewarded.
And there's no value in that. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I mean, why do you, I mean, you have the solution book. I mean, like, it's not that like there's value in it for me to find the shortest, like answer or exactly copy that. So that's not how learning happens. And it's interesting that when you think about that, it is obvious, but just think about the amount of effort that is going into formulating this curriculum in a way that is actually against creativity.
Right. No, and I think when you get an assignment turned in, they're looking to see what your answer is. There was a discussion like, "Oh, well, how did you go about solving this?" It's more just about teaching you the route to the correct answer and not like, "Oh, that's interesting how you thought that way," or I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, Caitlin, let's now take some time talk about your graduate school years. And I know it took a while for you to settle in and like find the type of projects you're really passionate about it and want to do. And so, first of all, I mean, like it was, how was it different than undergrad?
I think just because it was the same school too, because I went to UConn undergrad. Undergrad was such a fun time for me, and then to switch gears and kind of it almost becomes now like a full-time job, which you're getting paid to do. I think that lifestyle change was interesting. I was no longer in dorms where they kinda take care of everything for you. I had to find a place to live and start paying bills. I'm so glad I went to grad school first because I think it was a good transition into industry. I don't think I was ready to go into industry,
Mhm.
honestly. Like, my maturity level was not there. Like, emotionally, I don't think I was there either.
Mm. I always felt that way, honestly,
Mhm.
that like because the again like the unique intellectual skills that you had was not in par with again the way you delivered things or for example like respected some of the orders and things like so I always thought that like a few years in a safe environment would be beneficial to you. So
Yeah, I think yeah, God, I remember just I think when I turned 25, I remember thinking, like, I think my brain is actually fully, like, developed now. I think people forget that you don't totally mature until, like, your mid to late 20s, and I think a lot of that had to do with it too, for sure. Just nothing was really going that right for me at the time, and I didn't know how
that's
to handle
tragically.
it. Yeah, so
How was how was your experience with research?
I like I liked it,
Not the
but
particular research project, it's just like the whole concept of research compared to classes, more maybe structured assignments.
yeah, I feel like undergrad now that I think I feel like undergrad, there weren't that many times where it prepared you for how different research is because, if we did any type of lab, they were structured. There were very few times where it was you kind of had a lot of freedom to do whatever or expand your horizons, so I think that was a big adjustment for me. I think I'm not a very indecisive person, so I think having to make decisions on my own was hard. I think I was afraid of making the wrong
Mm,
decisions, but that's literally all that research is just screwing up and making wrong decisions until you get it
mhm,
right.
mhm.
So I think that was hard.
What dimension of research you like the most? It was more the freedom of schedule or the type of problems you could work on or your approach could be more flexible, different than like, for example, like this is the standard solution for something. What part was more attractive to you?
I think I like creating things for the research. I think one of my favorite things I did for composites research I did with you was the GUI for digital image correlation.
Mm,
I went and made a GUI that ran the cameras,
yeah.
and I really enjoyed that. I think, like you said, for something tangible where I'm like, "Oh, I can use this," and it's no coding. I just click buttons. I coded it all into a
Mm.
GUI. I really liked that.
And it
I
is interesting going back to again the creativity part of it. We could collect data without it.
mhm,
But and at that point that you made it, I again like when I saw the final product, I was just very pleased that wow, okay, that really made it simple. But it was not on top of my priority
yeah.
list to be done. However, now that I look back, that was the gateway for you to get interested in the project.
Mhm,
So even if it wasn't a priority, I should have maybe encouraged it more because that's how you essentially added your signature to it, like you brought your creative mindset to it, so do you see
right.
it that way?
Oh, definitely. I think that it's rewarding to not know how to use anything at all and then figure out how it works and then take it to that next step where it's like, I don't just know how it works. Like, I made a way to run it and make it do what I want myself. I like automating things.
Hmm.
Like, I'll spend a week automating something where it's like, you probably could have done this, the analysis or whatever it needs to be done in a day, but now I have an automated way to do it where I
Hmm.
just press a button and yeah, I like doing stuff like that.
Yeah, interesting. When you think about your advisor advisee relationship, like are there general suggestions that you can give to other students that might be like you, that they want to do certain things their way, they have their own fun things that they want to add to the project, for example making that GUI, for example the automatizing part of it, although the project may not require it immediately, or maybe in terms of like productivity measures is not like the best way of approaching something. I mean, like, but actually that is the way that you think you can stay interested in it. So, do you have any suggestion like how students can like approach it or
I mean, at least now at work, my number one question I ask is, what do you expect in the deliverable? What do you need from me? And then I guess whatever I add in there, it's like, oh, she added more things. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, if you just need X, Y, Z, and it doesn't really matter in what format or how it comes about, I guess it's more, I don't want to say loose guidelines, but yeah.
Mhm,
I mean, because for example, with the GUI, it's like, okay, at the end of the day, we wanted to run DIC with 2 cameras. Get it working, you
mhm,
know?
mhm, mhm.
Like, 'cause I guess there was a lot of different ways that could've gone, I guess. And
I know this might become like too technical or abstract for those that they don't
oh,
know
yeah.
exactly what your project was about, but like it was essentially like some experimental work. We wanted to run some advanced equipment. We could just use some basic, interfaces, softwares to run them, or like write a code that can kind of like operate these automatically behind the scene, like super like fancy and advanced. So you went the fancy route, and again, like
Yeah.
you enjoyed it, and
I did,
that's
yeah.
yeah, and
I
you
mean, that's
learned
why I
from
did
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that was also a way for me to learn how the equipment worked because just being given like, "Oh, here's a manual, like, this is what it does," I'm more of like, "Oh, let me mess around with them and see what they do." But yeah, I think that's how I learned a lot about them was actually getting in there and like
A lot of those with ADHD, Caitlin, I've worked with, including myself also, we have challenges when it comes to written deliverables. You didn't have that challenge, and writing was always a strength of yours. And I was always amazed by that, like that,
oh, thanks.
how fine you write and how easy. It's not like that you procrastinate. Again, like I was very surprised. I mean, like the first one or two assignments that, for example, we had to write an abstract or a conference paper or journal paper. We just like did it and without any delay. Do you know what makes it easy for you? Because it's supposed to be a challenge, honestly.
I think because whenever I think about writing, like, I think people get scared about, "Oh, I have to write a bunch of paragraphs." But I think the easiest way to organize your thoughts is I always start off in an outline form, literally just bullets. Like, I wanna say this, I wanna say this, and then I kinda add to each bullet, and then before you put the bullets together, you want your paper to read where you don't have questions in between 2 bullets, like, "Well, how'd you get from A to B?" The bullets
Mhm,
kinda bring you there, if that makes sense,
mhm, mhm.
and then eventually I start to delete the bullets and put things together. So I think starting off with an outline where you say, "Okay, I need to have XYZ in this paper," or "This content needs to be in there." It's kind of a way to stitch things together instead of saying, "What's the first paragraph gonna be about?" Like, that's
Mhm,
just too much. So
mhm.
it's staying on topic too and making sure you get everything in there that you need to get in there because I think it's very easy for me to start, especially even the way I talk is going off on tangents where
Yes.
it's like,
Yeah.
having an outline, like, "This needs to be in there." I even just put my figures in there too, and tables in a separate bullet. It kinda helps fill in the blanks, and it makes it less intimidating, I think, to get
That's
started.
impressive that you have been able to come up with a linearization method, if I can call it, to be able to do it. Because I personally struggle. Let me tell you where my struggle is, for example. Like because I kind of do it like that, just a high level portrayal of ideas, and then trying to kind of articulate on those is just like very frequently, too frequently, I go off tangent and I start like expanding on something without like completing the list or like doing this hierarchical, like multi-level process. I start like getting bogged down by like, okay, how can I kind of like refine this paragraph before like, and just I find myself like spending 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. I mean, like working on two paragraphs. I mean, like wordsmithing. And
Mhm.
so, and I know, and like it's consciously, I try to kind of remind myself that's, I just forget about it, go to the next one, but I keep doing the same thing. I mean, so it seems, I mean, when my brain wants to do
You
fine
bog down.
editing, it just wants to do fine editing. It doesn't want to work. It works at a lower level probably. I mean, like, it doesn't want to function at a higher level, so it's difficult for me to kind of dictate to it, like, okay, this is time for this, and then now it's time for the next level. So do you have any
Yeah, yeah.
suggestion?
You know what's funny too is because I feel like in ways I'm almost the opposite where I might not know exactly what to say, so I'll just put a big line, and then at the very end, it's like I'm finished, but I'll have these little sections where it's like blanks because I didn't know what to say, and those are the hardest for me to fill in. Like I just, or I'll be like, "Ah, I don't really like this paragraph," and I'll just highlight it in yellow, and I won't get back to it till the very end. I think I more like word vomit instead of fine details, so that's
Mhm.
funny, kind of the opposite.
It's very interesting because I wish, I mean, it's not I wish, but like we're different. But that's exactly where I get stuck, and I've seen a lot of other students with dyslexia when they face challenging presentation. I mean, like, it's either like they don't know exactly how transition from this to this. I mean, like, that is when very rapidly their interest and energy diminishes. I mean, like, quickly, and like then they start checking emails and Instagram, and then done.
Yeah.
So
I think that's why I like the outline so much because if I get stuck on a certain area, it's like, "Oh, well, I already know what I'm supposed to put down here," and I'll just kinda move on, you know?
mhm.
And I get the wording thing, like, if but I think I just get maybe overwhelmed by it, or I just know, like, now is not the time to worry about it.
That's
I'll just
amazing. You can do that.
yeah, just put a
That's
highlight in and say, "Come back to it." Like, you highlighted it, you're not gonna forget about it. It's right there. Just come back to it later because I think I've tried to do that more too with trying to find answers for things. Like, I really like to try and find the answer myself and, I'll go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole and
mhm.
come out on the other side, like, really far away from my answer. So I try to say, like, "Okay, it's, like, 9:15 now. Like, at 9:30, if you can't figure it out, go ask someone." Like,
And you do that.
I try to, yeah, just because and I try to tell other people that too. I think that's one of my biggest advice, I think, for grad school is don't get super bogged down on wanting to find the answer if there's people there who can help you, because that just gets super discouraging and you feel like you're not being productive, you're not getting anything done. Just there's so many people around you who have done this before, and, I loved getting asked for help,
Mhm.
to show what I know to other people. So I think having that it's almost like time management where you say, "Okay, this is what time it is." Like, if you can't figure it out, just ask someone else because you can waste 3 hours not getting the
That's a
answer.
great suggestion,
Yeah.
and I love that. And from also my point of view, which is advisor's point of view, I really like students to come to me with questions when it's warranted. I mean, like, when they are stuck. So I want you to kind of like continue that kind of stream of thought by adding more information into how they can overcome that kind of fear that, oh, what if I go there and ask this question, I may be perceived as not as smart or
Mhm.
intelligent. It's like, like, any idea about any suggestion about that?
I think the hardest part is probably the first time just breaking the ice because no one is ever going to think that your question is stupid. At least I've never been asked a question and said, "Oh, why don't they know that? Like, how do they not know that?" Everyone around you, I would say 99.9% of the people around you want to help you, and they know you're capable and they know you're smart or else you wouldn't be where you are.
Yes.
So, just because you don't know everything and you're not expected to know everything,
Yes.
doesn't like, it's okay to ask, and you'll feel so relieved after, like, "Oh, I'm glad I figured that out," instead of just rehashing it with yourself over and over again. I don't think that's super productive, especially when you have resources around you that
Yes.
are there to help you. But that's something I really struggled with too is I didn't wanna come off as, unworthy or unintelligent or not knowing what I'm doing, like I mean, to be honest, sometimes I'll just say, like, "I have no idea what I'm doing, I need help," and
Mhm.
that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's
that's
totally
that's
fine.
that's
Yeah.
life. Like,
Yeah.
life would be super boring if you just knew everything and got it right the first time, like, what's the point? Like,
Yeah, that's
so
true. Yeah. And again, like, it is the you're still at school when you're in a graduate program. It is understood that you're still in training.
Mhm.
You're learning, you're making mistakes, you're refining your approaches, you're mastering certain skills. So it's totally fine for students to approach their advisors or other senior students, ask for help. It is important to understand when it is optimal, because also a little bit of struggle is beneficial. So
Mhm.
not immediately after something comes to your mind or you don't know the answer, like just staying on it a little bit, struggling a little bit, and being convinced that okay, it's not optimal. It seems, I mean, like I don't know how to move forward with it, and I'm
Right.
spending hours, and like I can get a quick feedback, and that can really expedite the process. So
Right, and I think not just asking like, "Oh, how do you do this?" or "What's the answer to this?" or asking, how did you get to this answer?" or how like, "Why is it that you do it this way?" At least learn no don't
mm,
just get the answer, like,
interesting.
learn where it came from so next time
The
you
rational, the logic of it.
right, yeah, you can try and because you're absolutely right. I think some of it is problem solving skills, like, attempting to solve the problem yourself. But I think there's also a point, and everyone has to come to that point where it's like, okay, I need some help. I'm not going to waste another 2 hours on this. It's
Yeah.
just not productive. And I think also I've been in places where I act like I know, I understand, and then you get so far down the line where it's like, "I should have said I don't get it," and now this person thinks I get it. I think people are, too afraid to say, like,
It's
"I
just
don't
like I think it's
understand."
gonna be a fun thing. I mean, like if you
Yeah.
tell us,
Like, I've just been in situations where it's like, "Do you get what I'm saying? Do you understand?" I'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, I understand." And I think in the moment, sometimes I do understand, but, like, by the time I leave the room, I forgot, and so it's like, "Oh, like, I did get it when I was there, and now I forget," and, like, I don't know, I think not enough people say, like, "No, I really don't get it, like, can you show me?" And it's hard to say, like, I'm finally comfortable, and I think you have to be comfortable with the people around you to say, like, "No, I don't get it, please
what
help."
made you more comfortable?
1, being approached by those same people
Mm,
with their questions,
mm,
and 2, being in an environment where I've been told a million times, like, "It's okay if you don't get it, like, this is hard, like, this is not." I think we're not told enough, like, you work with people who have done this for years and years and years. That's why they're so good at it. Like, if you're new at something, it's hard, especially
yes.
in grad school. Nothing is like easy anymore. That's why it's such a high academic level. So I think they were not told enough. This is difficult. This is really hard work. Like,
Yes.
it looks easy to me because I've done it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. I mean, like I remember early on when I was doing my literature review, I was looking at like these papers, which is the outcome of years of struggle and
mhm.
making mistakes and correcting things, redoing experiments. And so, oh my God, how did they get it
Yeah,
right? I mean, like, how could they get this answer? Or, for example, like, how were they able to kind of like predict this response with this model? And it's like, what, this is brilliant. I cannot do it. It took me a while, actually. Maybe it was even after graduate. That actually, you don't present in the paper like how many try it took them to really to get to
yeah.
that point.
They
So
don't
it
publish
is,
their failures. Yeah.
yeah, they don't publish their failures. And exactly, I mean, the way it is portrayed is that okay, I mean, like, it's a very easy thing, it's
hmm
understood, see, the results are out there, the outcome is, so it's expected that in the first try you can generate this thing.
Oh, I think the most I will never use this language ever in anything I ever write. I One of my biggest pet peeves reading a paper is the phrase, "It is clear that
Mm.
XYZ." I'm like, "It's not clear to me." Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just feel like it's so, like, almost condescending to the reader.
Mm.
Like, you're acting like you're explaining this so perfectly to anyone reading it. I don't know. I hate that phrase. No offense to anyone who's ever
No,
used
no,
it, but
this is, I
it's
mean, like, it may, I don't know if I use it frequently, but I suspect I've used it. I may have used like evidently.
that's a
I mean,
little better.
yeah. So this is interesting. All of those nuances, and they even in group meetings or interactions with other students, I can see how some interactions may completely, because I've seen like when I was doing my PhD, there were students that they wanted to always look perfect. They never talked about their struggles.
Mhm.
They never talked about, and like it was a point that I was struggling with, like getting some of my models give me acceptable results, and I was just super disappointed. I was questioning everything about my cognitive capabilities. I was like, I'm like a headless chicken running around, and like, look at them.
How did
It
I get
seems,
in here?
yeah. So, did you have any experience similar to that, or like, or can you relate to it in some way?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think everyone I've ever been surrounded by, I'm very lucky where, there wasn't a lot of, like, competition. I feel like in some areas, other professions, there can be that competitive aspect, but I think there it's also just confidence in yourself too, that just because someone else acts a certain way doesn't mean, their life is perfect or they have everything
Yes.
perfectly going on. And I think those types of interactions, you think like, "Oh, well, what's wrong with me?" And it's like, well, it might be them, like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think it comes with a lot of confidence in yourself and self-acceptance where
Yeah.
just because the person who acts like they have the perfect life, like, they do not. Like,
You
anyone who
believe
has
that?
to I think anyone who shows off to the degree where it's like, "Whoa, like, they're so perfect." Like, I think they're covering up for
So
something.
it's not necessarily related to grad school, but like it's about you and your beliefs. I'm with you. I'm
Mhm.
more aware of like those people that they're really going to extreme, trying really hard to show that things are perfect. I mean, probably things are terrible. So otherwise, they wouldn't require that much effort and show off. But it is for me, it is more of like conscious processing of the situation. It's not my subconscious. So I need to process this, then finally conclude that no, I don't think that really portrays the truth of
Mhm.
the fact of the matter, So where are you with that?
I get what you're saying, but
Do you subconsciously completely like dismiss
no,
the show?
honestly, like, I think my thought process now is a lot more, like, calm, whereas before I was so anxiety ridden, and I attribute a lot to, like, that to cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, where it's really just it teaches I think I just really like logic, where it's like it
Mhm.
kinda takes the emotions out of things. So, if someone's coming across, I guess, pompous or overly confident, I feel like it just doesn't even really I just kinda think, "Well, that's them." I don't know. I think it's a lot less emotions involved or, like, looking at someone for how they are or I don't wanna say judging someone for how they are and just kind of worrying about yourself?
Mhm.
But I've also never really been, like, a super competitive, like, aggressive person, I don't think. So, I don't know. I know that totally didn't answer your question.
No, you mentioned CBT, so are you comfortable
Yeah.
talking?
Oh, yeah, that honestly, CBT, like, changed my life. Like, I I think during COVID, COVID was killer for me. I think the excuse to self-isolate, like, "Oh, no one's gonna blame you if you don't go out because, COVID's out there," and it was really just an excuse for me to not see friends, to, like, not leave my house. Like, I was so afraid to drive. Like, I would literally start crying behind the wheel while I was driving. I was just so anxious. I got super depressed. I think a lot of people, struggled emotionally, like, through that time, and I finally was just like, "I have to do something."
Mhm.
Like, it's gotten so bad. So, I saw this doctor. He specializes in CBT, and it just totally changed my life. It changed the way I think about things. I think one of the major takeaways I took from it is it's symbolic FFG. It stands for fact, feeling, goal. So if you're having kind of a thought where it's like, "Oh, like, I suck at this," or like, "I'm so stupid," you ask yourself, "Is that a fact?
Mhm.
How does that make you feel? And is that helping you achieve any goal?" And most of the time, you'll say no to all of them, but all it takes is one no.
Mm.
To realize that that's, like, an illogical thought. And I thought it was gonna be a lot of actual, like, grunt work, but it's like every day I started noticing, like, "Oh, like, why are you saying that? That's not true."
Mm.
Like, that's not a fact. And then it took another step as to, okay, well, how do I still feel like like, how do I feel what can I do to make myself feel better? And then it kinda stepped towards using your thoughts that kind of drive your actions, like, "Oh, like, my kitchen's like, my instead of saying, 'Oh, my kitchen's a mess, I'm such a slob, like, why
Mhm.
can't I keep a clean kitchen?'" You say, "Well, I'm not the best at keeping my kitchen clean. I have, like, 15 minutes right now, why don't I pick up a little bit?"
Hmm.
It slowly kinda started evolving, the way I thought, and I just started feeling like it's almost like you don't believe people when they say, "Oh, yeah, it
Yeah.
changed my life," but it truly changed my life, and I just learned a lot of things about the human brain, like, like, if you go out to a party or something, you had, like, a really good time, but then you come home and you're like, "Ah, like, why did I do that one thing? Like, why did I say that to that sad person?" Like, I'm sure on the car ride home from
Yeah.
this, it's like, instead of thinking, "Oh, this was so fun, I had a great time talking," I'm gonna be like, "Why'd I say that one thing? That was so stupid." And I guess that's, like, instinctual thing, because back when we were cavemen, we would go hunting, and instead of being like, "Oh, that's great, I caught, like, 3 saber-toothed tigers," you had to think about, like, "Oh, that one move I made, that was dangerous, I coulda
Yeah.
gotten myself killed," you know? So it is instead of back then, it was to keep you alive, but now it's to make you feel awful after social
Interesting.
events,
Yeah.
that
It seems you've
instinct.
changed a lot.
Oh,
It seems you
sorry,
have changed a lot.
me?
Yeah.
I hope so. I feel a lot better
I mean,
about
you
myself.
also look calmer, I can say for sure.
Yeah, I think it just changed my mindset where it's like, not everything is such a big deal, I don't know. Especially just I'm not a tidy person. I grew up in a home where, like, my mom, very neat, everything had its place. I'm never gonna be like that, and, like, that's fine.
That's fine.
That's totally fine. It's really not a bit like, do I live in squalor? No. Have
Mhm.
I lived in squalor before? Yes. I've gotten better with that, but, I'm never gonna be my mom, and that's fine.
And it is because again, like it happened to me at some point in my life gradually, that kind of self-forgiveness, self-acceptance. It's very important also to realize it is all a process. It's
Mhm.
incremental. You just like spend 10 minutes cleaning that thing or like responding to those emails that like you were dragging your feet like forever to get to. It's just like, okay, respond to one of them. I mean, you don't need to go through like plot through all of the kind of
Mhm.
unread list, and understanding that it's not that like we are going to wake up tomorrow and all of the problems will be solved. It's just a process,
Right.
chipping at it like gradually, one email at a time, one dish at a time, and that essentially after a while then that problem is gone.
Yeah, and I think nowadays there's so many services that I take advantage of, at least, like, there's so many things I just have subscribed to be delivered to my apartment, and it's like, I just don't even have to worry about it, it just comes. Like, I love things like that where it's one less thing for me to think about, like, do I sometimes maybe spend an extra, like, $5? Like, probably, but it's just I'm incapable of doing this, so let me have a service do it for me. Like,
Mm. So I'm aware of your time, Caitlin. I really appreciate that you took this time to talk to us today. The wisdom you shared is so valuable, and I am sure that there are a lot of other students or maybe professionals that they will benefit from what you said today. More specifically, I want you to think about your middle school age years, 12, 13. What would be the advice you give to a student of that age, or to you, like maybe it's easier for you to think about yourself if you think about your 13 years old. What advice do you give yourself?
um, God, I feel like that's such a young age. I don't know, it's almost like the same advice my mom gave me where it's like, things get better and just always be yourself, and something that you think is a problem right now, years from now, you're gonna look back and see how you grew from it and how you got better from it, and I don't know, I
That's
guess
so
just be
important.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are afraid to be themselves, so
And it's just in that age, so many times we found ourselves thinking that's the end of the world.
Oh my god, yeah,
Yeah.
and you could not pay me enough money to go back to those years. It's literally the worst. everything is awful. In retrospect, it's just like memories,
Yeah.
good or bad.
I think your mom gave you the best advice. Yeah. And if you think about your college age yourself, what would your advice be to yourself?
Calm down, honestly. Like, I don't know. It's I think I was just so full of anxiety and I didn't know how to handle it. Like, there's professionals out there that can help you deal with anxiety, and
Was there any belief? Was there anything that any mindset shift that you could go through to help with the anxiety at that point? The way you were, was there any way to start looking at things a little differently and those could help you
I
with
mean,
anxiety a little?
I know it's hard to have, and it takes a lot of practice, I think, to have it, but having a positive mindset instead of looking at an experience and seeing all the negative, see what kind of positive comes out of it. I catch myself doing it all the time, and there's times where I think would have started breaking down crying over certain things, and now it's more you just laugh it off because once things happen, like it happened, like that's life, and it's how you deal with it after. You can either freak out and start crying and have a fit over it, or you can try and make it work.
Yeah, that's very important. Again, like it's those anxieties sometimes they are warranted, but they're like those cases are very rare if you think about that, like that there is something really really
Mhm,
concerning that requires like your full attention and anxiety. I mean, like most of the times it's just like the way things are being interpreted.
mhm,
And ADHD brain tends to overinterpret or underinterpret things. I mean, frequently, like just blowing things out of proportion that moment. I mean, like very heated emotional reaction instantaneously. When I remember, for example, like the first time I got semi-negative reviews back on one of my papers when I submitted to a journal. It was just like end of the world for me. It's like, how could they be so cruel? And like, it took me some time to realize it's a professional thing. They're asking questions. Some of them are the best questions. Some of them are like they missed the point, and like, and even if they missed the point, I mean, this is your responsibility. Probably you were not clear. I mean, like, so
yeah.
to separate the emotion from that, it took me a while, actually.
Yeah, I was standing in line at Cumbies the other day, and I was standing in there for, like, 10 minutes, and there was one guy in front of me, and I was just thinking like, "Oh my god, like, why is this taking so long?" It's like, this could be this guy's first day. Also, like, first world problems, like, you're trying to put gas in your car. Like, you have a car, like, this guy's just he could be having a bad day, he doesn't know what he's doing, like, it is what it is, like and I think those feelings kinda went away. I think it has you gotta put things in perspective, like, in the moment, you might think it's the end of the world, but most things really aren't. Like,
Yes. Thank you very much, Caitlin.
thank you for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate that. I enjoyed the conversation. I learned from it personally, and I hope that our audience also enjoy from it. And also, I want to ask our audience to share this podcast with friends, family, with their network, those that they think they may benefit from what we discuss here. And also, I want to ask you to subscribe to this podcast. So when we release a new episode, you get a notification. Otherwise, I mean, it's going to fall off your radar and you may not even be notified that we have more or newer episodes coming out. So thank you for being with us, and I will see you next time.